This week on The Bachelor.
Juliana, the feelings, the emotion, it's all there.
I do know that I have very strong connections.
I'm conflicted and I'm torn.
I want this to be a long-lasting relationship, and, I do feel the pressure.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the new episode of The Bachelor, Season 29, Episode 8. Let's get right into this. Alright, so it is Fantasy Suites. Grant, Latia, Juliana, and Zoe are now in the Dominican Republic. Grant actually has Dominican ancestry, and he's been here playing basketball before, so he's in a beautiful place that he truly feels like it's home. Jesse's there too. He and Grant, they play some basketball, and then they talk about being here in the DR and how Grant realizes how important this week is. It's getting down to the final wire. Jesse tells him that he needs to really figure out and ask the things that he needs to know about the girls and what he wants them to know about him. So we begin with Juliana, and she had a Bachelor veteran come talk to her, Daisy from Joey's season. Juliana is telling her how they have both said that they're falling in love with each other, but she can't deny that she's feeling a little melancholy because of the idea that Grant is going to be with other girls this week in a very intimate setting, and also her own experiences being cheated on in the past. Daisy shares how she felt when she was in Juliana's place. She too was a bit hesitant to open up herself, but she eventually did, and even though she wasn't chosen, she doesn't regret it at all. She doesn't regret putting it all on the table. So it is then time for them to meet. They ride around the jungle. It got a little messy. He was going fast. It was kind of cool. Juliana didn't want her hair to look bad, but Grant said it's all good. Then they take a pause and sit on a bench. Grant tells her that he really likes hanging out with her. He then shares about his grandmother, who is from the Dominican Republic. Juliana then shares her insecurities that she's been feeling lately about the other girls and how she's starting to realize that at the end of the day, it could maybe not be her who he chooses. Grant says to her, I've been thinking about you a lot, and when I do think about you, I can't stop smiling. Then they kiss. They're really cute together, and they really connected, but tonight Grant says that they are going to have to connect on a deeper level. So it's the later part of the day. The place really is beautiful, and it was very windy, which I weirdly think is kind of romantic. So he cheers and says that he likes her more and more each time that they spent together. So Juliana thanks him for opening up earlier today about his family and when he was young. She says that it's important for him to see all the sides of her. So she opens up about her ex cheating on her time and time again. She was with him for 6 to 7 years. And that definitely caused a lot of damage to her. She was crying a lot. As she is saying all of this, she says that it's a challenge to go from feeling so minimized by someone. She says, I'm still a little broken and I still need to fix myself. I want it so bad, but I'm afraid someone isn't going to love me for being me. Grant was also crying as she's saying this to him. Juliana says Grant has shown up in ways that no one else has for her in a very long time, and that's why it's so scary that maybe they won't end up together. Grant says that it's okay that she's still working on herself. That's what love is all about. It's about healing together, growing, and he says that he sees her as a treasure. He then says to her, earlier today when you were so conscious about how your hair looked, I turned to look at you and I just thought how beautiful you were, and I'll always remind you how beautiful you are, even when you don't feel like it. He then shows her a Polaroid picture of their hometown where he had all the pizzas and she had the flowers that they took over to her parents' house. It was very sweet, a very cute picture. He then tells her again that he's falling in love with her. They then open up their envelope and it has the key for the fantasy suite, and they get going to their private room. Grant talks about how much he likes her. He likes the way they kiss. He likes the way they look at each other. Listen, if they don't end up together, I'm gonna be mad. So it's now the next morning, and they're waking up. They're both saying that they feel very good. Juliana looked very happy. I want to know what we all want to know. I think the answer is yes, based on how they were talking. They say that they really opened up. He then says that he has to go and he'll see her in a couple of days. It is now time for Grant to get with Zoe. I've said this for a while, but I do feel like Zoe's here by default. Like, she's just kind of floated through. She has spent very little time with him. So she meets up with Rachel from Joey's season. She also made it to Fantasy Suites with Joey, but she hadn't spent much time with Joey, so they're kind of in the same boat. Zoe shares what happened in her hometown. Rachel says when she got to Fantasy Suites, she was definitely spiraling a little bit. Zoe says that they need to talk about very much more deeper stuff that they haven't talked about, like what would marriage, raising kids, what would that look like? Rachel says to her, ask your questions, enjoy your time, and just try to make the best of it. So Grant and Zoe meet up. I thought Zoe looked very pretty. Grant says that they're going to be doing something that requires no talking. So they enter this cool place where they're going to be doing yoga, which again, there's no talking. So they have another couple that's like instructing them and showing them the poses and things like that. So they follow along. It was a little bit awkward for sure. They had them doing some interesting things, but eventually they did get in sync. And you know, sometimes with things like these, I feel like your souls can definitely connect because physical touch is so huge. So I think you can connect even if there's no dialogue. But I feel like this is something that they probably should have done like weeks ago, not in the week of Fantasy Suites, if that makes sense. So then it's time for the night portion. Zoe says that she didn't enjoy the yoga. I was like, girl, why would you say that? Grant says that, sure, they haven't had a one-on-one date, but he feels like when they were in hometowns and he saw her family and friends, that gave him a new perspective about her. He then starts to say things like, because she wants to know a little bit more about him. He's like, well, I like R&B, I like rap, my favorite color is blue. She says, what's my favorite color? He says, is it blue too? I don't know. She's like, no, it's teal. I was like, okay, this is just goes to show us how, like, y'all talking about favorite colors on Fantasy Suites. Zoe says that because they haven't spent much time together, she really doesn't know much about him. So she wants to know more. He opens up about his childhood, how he grew up, his father's issues, being alone, and how he wants his family to be different than his upbringing. Zoe says that she too wants to have someone who she can feel secure with. She also wants to like party, vacation, build an empire with someone, and then eventually have kids. Grant says that he sees a lot of important things in Zoe, so they get the card, and she accepts to go to the private suite. It's the next morning, and we actually don't see Zoe and Grant waking up with each other. We just go straight to see them going to the beach. Zoe says that she feels really good. Grant says that they have a lot of similarities in their stories and in their outlook of life. So now we see Latia. She says that she's meeting up with Katie. When I saw her, I was like, who is this? But then I remembered, this is the girl from Zach's season. She ended up with Zach. I feel like that season is so forgettable for some reason. Anyway, but Katie ended up with Zach. She's still with him, and Katie starts talking to Latia about what happened with her on her Fantasy Suite week, which I clearly remember when she started talking about it. Zach had vowed not to have sex with any of the three. He didn't have it with the first one. He ended up having it with the second one, and then when he got to his third date, which was Katie, who's here, he ended up telling her, oh, I had made a promise, but then I broke it. I remember that happening, and I just thought that was so crazy at the time. I still think it's crazy. Because Katie didn't care that he did it. She cared that he would be telling her. Like, that was weird. Latia has concerns because she doesn't want to know of Grant being intimate with others, so they can relate on that. Katie gives her some advice. She says, don't think about what he might have with other girls. Just focus on your connection and on your time with him. It was nice to see Katie, even though I didn't remember her at first, but she's still with Zach, so I'm happy for her. So Latia then meets up with Grant, and they go ziplining. Latia wasn't really feeling this activity. She said that her stomach was hurting, but it's not just because of the zipline, it's also because of what this week entails. So after they zipline, they go to this other beautiful place. Latia asks when was the last time that he was here, what did he think of her hometown, and Grant says that he really liked it. He enjoyed meeting everyone. She says that she hasn't told him yet, but she would be willing to move from Utah if she needed to for them, which is good because he really wants to be close to his dad. Latia then says that it's tough for her to think about his other relationships, but it's worth it. It's worth being in this process because that's how she's met him. It is then time for the night portion of the date. They're talking about how fun today was, but then they get serious. Grant asks her what is her timeline in her head of when will she have kids and all that stuff. Latia says that she's ready. She is 31, so probably within 2 years, because she's not getting any younger. Grant low-key feels like that's a little bit quick, but it's not a deal breaker or anything. He then brings up the concerns that she had brought up earlier today, and Latia says, my brain just spirals at times. My anxiety of the unknown can get to me. I really don't want to know or hear how your time was spent with the other people. I just want to enjoy our time together. Grant says, I totally understand and respect that. He then hands her overnight sweet card. She reads it and he asks, what do you think? She says, I think you're a great guy, but I need to make choices to protect my feelings, so sex is not on the table for me right now. Grant says, I respect that, because at the end of the day, sex isn't the foundation of a relationship. He says, it's the other things that matter most, and I know how much you mean to me because I love you. I gasped. I was like, oh, he didn't say I'm falling in love with, no, he said I love you. She too says I love you to him. So they still go to the room. They're just not gonna do the dun. Switch the next morning. They're waking up. He takes breakfast to her bed. He says that he's very happy with where they're at, and she says to him, I was so happy to hear that you said that you loved me. Now here's the thing. Grant feels a little bit conflicted by saying this. He thinks maybe he said it too soon. It's not that he regrets saying it because he doesn't feel like that. No, he does love her, but there's another woman who he's starting to love. And we all know damn well who that other girl is. But he's like, should I end things and just be with Latia now? He is so confused. So the women then start to get ready for later today, and they all feel the same, nervous and anxious. And then it is time for the rose ceremony. Grant does a check-in with Juzzy. Then the women begin to arrive. 3 women, 2 roses, 1 Grant. He tells the girls that this has been an intense week and that it pains him to have to send one of them home. But without further ado, the first rose goes to Latia, as expected. The second and final rose goes to Juliana, as expected as well. Zoe did not receive a rose. Seeing her stand there empty-handed did make me feel bad. Don't get me wrong, even though I don't think she should have even made it this far, I will say I think she's a good person who truly deserves love. He walks her out and she was sad, obviously. She's crying, but she says that they did have a great time. They both put as much as they could into their connection, and she says that he was great, and she knows that he had to make this tough choice. So she leaves. I think they liked each other, but they never had that chemistry. That romantic, natural, genuine chemistry. So this was expected, but I do wish her the best. So then we see Grant wake up the next morning. He's pretty confused, and he's feeling uneasy. His family arrives. His mom, dad, and sister. So it's great to see that they're there for him. They're going to be helping him in this journey to see who he ends up with. And the mom then asks him, are you closer to one of them than you are with the other? And Grant says, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Each relationship is good, and I feel like they have different dynamics, but I don't know. He says that he's never been this conflicted in his life, and that's the end of the episode. Next week is the finale. It's going to be Grant's hard decision that he's going to have a really hard time coming to a conclusion. You guys, I actually thought this was a pretty good episode. Again, I knew Zoe would not make it to the final two. I think it was pretty obvious that Juliana and Latia would be it. But I feel like he had some really good dates with both Juliana and Latia. And it's going to be interesting because he's really going to have a hard time choosing one of the two. And I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I will say, though, this is just what I'm thinking. I could be totally wrong. But I have a feeling that when he's with Juliana, he doesn't think of Latia. But when he's with Latia, he probably thinks of Juliana. And if that is the case, then I think the answer is pretty clear. It should be Juliana. But I don't know. He did say I love you to Latia first. So we'll see what happens. I can't wait for the finale. I actually am looking forward to it very much. So y'all, let me know what your thoughts were. What did you think of this season? Were you surprised that Zoe left? And who do you think is going to win next week? Let me know. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll catch y'all next time. You have a great one. Bye.